Here's an interesting story from the Washington Free Beacon. So they're reporting that Chris Cuomo did a puff piece on WeWork because, and it was a really weird segment, like, wow, what great work WeWork is doing to something about veterans or something. And it turns out, according to the Free Beacon, that a woman doing PR for WeWork at the time had previously worked for, I'm not sure if it was for CNN or for another network, maybe it was for CNN and then another network, but had been one of the Chris Cuomo sexual misconduct accusers. So this was to keep her quiet, to make her happy, which is a massive, massive journalism no-no. And a really, like, this one's actually a little bit beyond what we've learned so far about all of this, and raises a lot of questions. I should say, by the way, Emily Jashinsky, culture editor at The Federalist, is with us. Emily, did you see this story, and were your eyes widening the way mine did when I saw it?
Yeah, no, this is a great report from Eliana Johnson, and what she's basically saying is that this alleged sexual misconduct victim of Chris Cuomo's was working in PR for WeWork in 2017, and WeWork has a million problems, so I wouldn't have wanted to be working in their PR shop back in 2017. But Chris Cuomo sort of dangled this professional favor, which if you work in PR and advertising, a chunk of time on CNN's morning show with two big anchors, Alison Camerata and Chris Cuomo, is worth a lot of money. Whether it's actually worth the money that people in the industry think it's worth is a very different question. But this is a valuable piece of television property that Chris Cuomo, according to the sources that Eliana cites, had. He was doing this favor for her to basically placate her, try to, I think, prevent anything from going public, something like that. It's incredible how easily people like Cuomo do this. It truly is and it's incredible that Alison Camerata went along with it. The WeWork program was, I think they had places in their locations for veterans, and I think probably some counseling as well, something to that effect, which is great. But to take a company that has tons of problems, that the media actually has done a decent job since it was getting all of this early gushing and praising. It has done a decent job of investigating, but this is a company that does not deserve free PR. I mean, no major corporation does, let alone this one at the time. That should have been getting way more scrutiny instead of favorable comments because a CNN anchor has sexual misconduct allegations against it. I mean, it's like amazing. But I think my big takeaway is just how this is reflexive, easy, gets away with it until, years later he gets fired, and that's that.
Yeah, I feel like that SNL character thinking about this, like, this story has everything. It's got the Me Too angle, it's got the corporate corruption, it's got the Cuomo brother family dynasty issue. I mean, like, remember, this is the guy who just got in trouble, not just for the Me Too stuff, the Me Too stuff, but the way the family came together doing this kind of absurd pandemic era stunts with the giant Q-tip that he was pretending to put up his brother's nose, and the weird back and forth about their family dinners and what their ma thought about their pandemic response. And on top of that, not only for there to have been the Me Too scandal that finally emerged, but to find out that there was an effort at suppressing it by basically offering favors to a company that's now got Netflix specials about it because the level of corruption and kind of like corporate malfeasance that went into maintaining the perception that this was a viable company, largely through PR stunts and vibes, makes this a really incredible story.
We're getting into extreme levels of journalistic malpractice, from all the things you just mentioned, from how they covered how he covered his brother, the governor. I mean, a situation that there is no answer for how you should do this. You should just not have your important anchor be the brother of the most important political figure in the relevant jurisdiction. But this goes even beyond that, to offer a fluff piece to someone to keep them quiet. And it is, like you said, Emily, there is some kind of sick, corporate PR, you help me out, I help you out thing, like a sleaziness that just is kind of always operating in the media and this kind of stuff. But this goes so far beyond that.
Well, right, and producers were surely involved at CNN, and Eliana's story does a great job of saying, like, this was in the middle of CNN's breathless Trump coverage. There was all kinds of stuff going on in the news that day, and I think it actually gets so much worse than all of this when you consider that this was happening on CNN at the time when they were purporting to be the apples and bananas network, the network of facts over fiction. This is a major media institution. Not a lot of people watch the cable channel, but its news website is one of the most visited websites in the world. Not just among news, like this is a very powerful media institution, credentialed, elite, all of those things, that is just lying, deceiving their viewers on an incredible level of deception constantly. And now, years later, we learned that this was all happening at the same time. Corruption that's not just ideological and political, but also in as it regards to sexual misconduct. There was so much preening and sanctimony, not just about Trump, but about the Me Too movement on CNN. And so the fact that they were smugly dividing the country, talking down to Americans this entire era while also conducting themselves in this way is so disgusting.
Yeah. How many CNN segments on a daily basis are some kind of kickback or misdirection, so you don't ask the wrong questions, you get the wrong idea about what's going on in the network? Like that's not a question we should have to ask, but it is an open question at this point.
And it's fundamental to this theme that's come up through a lot of the segments today, which is that you have this political bifurcation, you have all of this conflict, in part because there is no trust because of moments like this. And the liberals really are cognizant of, they're deeply aware of these kinds of issues coming up on the right, and they don't understand why some conservatives say they don't care, or they'll blow it off. And it's precisely because they see it as a bipartisan issue. Sometimes you guys are bad, sometimes we're bad. And liberals, because of the silos that they're in, oftentimes just aren't aware of the fact that this is the kind of thing that's happening across the board in these kind of environments. So I think it's important to raise these issues and have conversations like this one.
Absolutely.
We'll have more. Go ahead, Emily.
I was going to say, and they're doing it with so much more power. And it's not untrue that, the right used to have power in a lot of these institutions, and it used to be more of this like the corporate environment was more just like pro-business, right? And now the corporate environment is different than that. And so the right isn't the one wielding the power at these institutions. And so the corruption, even if things are happening on the right, even if you don't like a Daily Caller story, it's not the same as it's certainly not the same as not liking a New York Times story, right? Like you have right of center places that the left will constantly attack, but they're doing this from so-called neutral, powerful, elite platforms, and that is so much more damaging. It doesn't excuse anything that that is legitimately wrong on the right, but it is so profoundly damaging. Look at all of the disinformation that was peddled at the University of Chicago and Atlantic's disinformation conference last week. I mean, it is stunning. It is. I can't even wrap my head around it. It is so corrupt. It is driving so many people, not just conservatives, to have zero trust in the media, which, by the way, I think is very important. We need a healthy, functioning fourth estate that has trust in it to hold powerful people accountable. We don't have that now, and the journalists are the ones that are making it worse.
It's certainly not driving people to subscribe to CNN Plus. Emily, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll have more Rising right after this.